A president swept into office with Democratic majorities on both sides of Capitol Hill may end up with a Republican House and Senate in his final 2 years. Joining me now around the table, former Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell, former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour, Democratic Party spokesman Mo Olathe, and Republican Party spokesman Sean Spicer. Thank you all for being here. Let me just put this out there. This is a president that came in on hope and change. He's still talking about hope and change. This is not the change he's wanting, should this become an all-Republican Capitol Hill. How does he work with that?
Well, I think if the Republicans take the Senate, I think he has to focus on issues where there's an opportunity to move forward. Infrastructure, energy. Assume the Republicans send him a Keystone Pipeline bill. If I'm President Obama, I send it back and say, put in stuff for alternative energy, the production tax credit, et cetera. Let's get an all-in energy bill. I'll sign it. Infrastructure. We've got to do something about the nation's highways and roads and bridges. We can't just keep kicking it down the road. A good infrastructure bill that does something for the long term, I'll sign it. So I think the Republicans, be careful what you wish for. If they get the Senate, they better do something. They better send the president some responsible pieces of legislation, or they'll get crushed in 2016.
Right, because I was going to say governor, but other governor, don't Republicans have to show they can do something? Now we're in a leadership position. Should they take it? Now we're in a leadership position. We have to produce something.
I think you'll see Republicans in the House and Senate do what the House has been doing. Focus on economic growth. Focus on job creation. Focus on legislation that result in higher incomes. I'm like Ed. Part of that can be energy, but also trade, also tax reform, and I think very clearly transportation infrastructure. Finally, of course, we got to start doing the business of the government. Do you know that the U.S. Senate hasn't even taken up an appropriations bill this year? Hadn't taken up a single one. I think you'll see the Republican House and Senate will go back to passing a budget, sending it to the president.
Wow, Mo, it sounds like it'll be great.
Maybe in some alternate fantasy land, but the reality, one, I'm not ready to concede that the Republicans are going to have control of the Senate. I actually think Democrats will hold on to the Senate. But it is hard, with all due respect to Governor Barbour, it is hard to make an argument that Republicans can get us back to the business of governing when Republicans were the ones who shut the government down over an ideological vendetta against this president, and have signaled that they may take us there again. They have spent the last 6 years doing nothing but focusing on how to block common sense priorities on immigration, on the minimum wage, on infrastructure, on issue after issue. If in some fantasy land they do take control of the Senate, then you know what? Okay, now it's your time. Now it's your time to show that you actually are willing to do this. I'm not sure that they know how.
Sean, can I just twist the question a little bit because this is all on the assumption that Republicans take over majority in the Senate.
It's a pretty good assumption.
Yes, but when you look at the wind in the face of the Democrats, history runs against the Democrats. The geography is running against them. They're playing hard in territories that really are Republican territories. They have more people up in the Senate. In all of that, why aren't we sitting here talking about it and going, of course they're going to take over the Senate? It should be a blowaway, and yet we have races that are not, a lot of them.
Well, look, number one, you're taking on incumbents in most of these things, and it's never an easy thing to beat an incumbent. The last time we beat more than 2 was 1980. It doesn't happen, especially in the Senate where they've got 6 years of incumbency to be able to go around their state, bring home things, and campaign on the taxpayer dime. And that's in both parties. I mean, that's just the reality of being a United States Senator. That's why so many incumbents are reelected. But the fact of the matter is, you look at states like Colorado, New Hampshire, Iowa, and even Virginia now, we are extremely competitive and ahead in every one of those states, and I think that's important. But getting back to the original question, just 2 quick points. One, the president did say his policies were on the ballot. So I think if we take over the Senate, I think it's a clear repudiation of those policies. Second, I think when it comes to what's actually getting done, and Governor Barbour alluded to this, was we have 330 pieces of legislation that the Republican-controlled House has passed to the Senate that haven't moved. And a good chunk of those are bipartisan. Some of them are infrastructure, some of them are energy related, some of them are regulatory. But I think that the Republican House has been getting things done. With a Republican Senate, we're finally going to see some of those bills head to the president's desk.
Candy, I disagree for just 1 second. I disagree with Jim Baker, who's a great guy. I think there is a huge problem with the Republican brand. And you're right. They should be stampeding this election, given all the things he said, and they're not. And I agree that this election isn't over by any means. If Democrats win, if an independent wins in Kansas and Democrats win in Georgia, I think the Democrats hold the Senate.
Let me just say, Candy, about the brand. We have the most Republicans in the House of Representatives since 1954. 29 of the nation's governors are Republicans. We have a bigger majority by percentage of governors, Republicans, than Democrats in the Senate. More state legislatures have Republican majorities than Democrat majorities. It's not the brand. What you've got in this Senate race is there are 3 open Democrat seats. The Republicans are winning them all by high double digits. You're having to beat incumbents time and time and time again, and I think you're right.
Well, let's talk about those governors. Well, let's talk about those governors. Republican governor in Pennsylvania is about to go down. There's a Republican governor in Maine who's likely going to lose. A Republican governor in Florida, I believe, is going to lose. I believe the Republican governors in Wisconsin and Michigan are on the ropes. The Republican governor in Ruby Ridge, Kansas, is about to lose. I think there are going to be more Republican governors that lose on election night than Democratic senators that are going to lose.
I will venture to say there will be a higher percentage of the governors in the country will be Republicans than the senators will be Democrats.
Katie,
Whoa! I couldn't follow that. I couldn't follow
Hold on, one quick point on that. If you want to talk about governors, let's talk about them. Because we're in single digits in blue, Maryland. We're in head-to-head in Rhode Island, where Alan Fung is going to beat Gina Raimondo. We're above in Connecticut. We're above in Massachusetts. And I think we are going to pull out Maine. So New England, which is not exactly a stranglehold for the Republican Party, big for the Dems, I think we're going to do very well there. But second, I think that when you look at how we're doing overall as a country, as Governor Barber pointed out, it's the state legislative races, it's the governor's races, it's the House, it's the Senate. Taken collectively, this is going to be a good night for Republicans if we get all those people out to vote.
Hang on right here. We're going to take a look at the micro after this. I'm going to ask each of you about your favorite race this year and have you pick who's going to win. Be right back. We are back with the governors, Ed Rendell and Haley Barbour. Mo Elleithee and Sean Spicer are heads of their respective parties, not chairman, but spokesman. Thank you for being here, all of you. I want to put up a list of what we see as the 10 closest races right now. Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, and ask you all to pick your favorite one and who's going to win.
I'm a huge fan of Colorado. I think Cory Gardner's run an absolutely fantastic campaign.
Republican.
He's a House member, jumped into the Senate race. He's pitched a perfect game. He's reaching out to communities that Republicans traditionally haven't been for. His ground game is superb. The RNC got in early there, and we've just run a great campaign. We're about 100,000 in early vote. I feel really good about the race that he's run. He's been fantastic on message. He's just a great guy, and I think he's going to be a fantastic U.S. Senator.
Colorado's getting really, really hard to predict about a lot of things.
It's an interesting state. One race that's actually not on your list, but I'm really interested in, is Kansas governor, where Republican Governor Sam Brownback is, I think, about to go down. He has wrecked his state fiscally, cut education, and Paul Davis, the Democrat there, has put together an incredible bipartisan coalition where over 100 Republicans have endorsed his, Republican office holders have endorsed his campaign. That's going to be a big win for Democrats.
And does Brownback's problems drag down Senator Roberts, who's in a tough fight?
Well, it's a very Republican state. You haven't elected a Democrat senator since 1932. There may be some Republicans in Kansas who say, I'm not going to vote for 2 Democrats. And let's face it, Orman is a Democrat. The idea that he's running as a Republican. He contributed to Obama's campaign. He contributed to Harry Reid's campaign.
He's an independent on the ballot, but Republicans have made much of his background.
Sheep's clothing.
Right.
The race that I think is interesting is Georgia. The Georgia Senate race, Perdue, a businessman, running against Sam Nunn's daughter. So both parties have extremely good candidates, and yet it's probably going to go to a runoff because of a third-party candidate. A Libertarian is probably going to keep Perdue from getting a majority. I think it's likely, very likely, that in January, when that runoff occurs, that Perdue, the Republican, will beat Nunn. But this is a race that's going to be thrown over to January because of the Libertarian, and that could cost the Republicans the seat in North Carolina, where Tillis, if the Libertarian vote were split between him and Senator Hagan, probably Tillis would win.
Yikes. If we're sitting here in January wondering who's controlling the Senate, it's going to be a long holiday season.
My favorite race is going to be Louisiana, because everyone counts Mary Landrieu out. She was trailing in both elections, in her last 2 elections, and then won the runoff. Mary's a fighter. She tells the truth. She got in a little trouble for telling the truth, but I think that just reinforces voters' view that no one controls Mary Landrieu, that she speaks for the people of Louisiana. She's going to win.
Well, that's a nice way to say that Mary Landrieu, when she was asked why the president wasn't doing so well in Louisiana, she said, to be very, very honest with you, the South has not always been the friendliest place for African Americans. It's been a difficult time for the president to present himself in a positive light.
Well, Katie,
that's a plus?
I want to answer that because when President Obama was running in the primary, I said there are places in Pennsylvania where he's not going to get votes because he's African American. Everyone came down on me, but it was the truth, and it didn't hurt me a bit. And it's not going to hurt Mary because Mary's a truth teller.
Well, the fact of the matter is a lot of people in the South that know that is not true. I mean, we're sitting here today where
David Duke?
Yeah, David Duke. There's a good example. David Duke was totally repudiated by people who said, had bumper stickers on their card, said, vote for the crook. It's important.
Yeah, but look at all the
against David Duke.
Look at all the votes.
The fact of the matter is there are a lot of people in the South in 2008 who voted for Barack Obama because he was black, because they wanted to make a statement that Jim Crow was gone. And there's a lot more of that than there are residual David Dukes who couldn't get pallbearers in some counties.
Governor Haley Barbour, Governor Ed Rendell. Sean, thank you for coming. Mo, thank you. Mo Lathy, Sean Spicer. Gee, happy Election Day. We'll have you on afterwards to tell us what it all means. We'll be right back.